think it's taking the people first to mean that you can't be hard on people, or that uh, nice or values driven equates to outcomes. And it just doesn't always equate to that. I mean, sometimes it does, of course. And if you have kind conversations with people, you don't dig into deeper issues or bring up uncomfortable topics. And I guess learning that hard conversations in and of themselves can actually be a form of kindness.
They say it's lonely at the top. They're right. But you don't have to scale your company alone. Welcome to the Scaling CEO. I'm Glenn Gow, the CEO Success Coach. On this podcast, I sit down with top performing CEOs to uncover the hidden patterns and frameworks behind their success so you can avoid common pitfalls and accelerate your company's growth. Now, on to the show.
Welcome to the Scaling CEO. My guest today is Julie Szudarek. Julie is the kind of leader who decides what she wants to be. She decided she wanted to be a CEO in her college application essay, and then goes out and becomes a CEO twice. Her journey is a masterclass in scaling. She cut her teeth in the chaos of Groupon, turning around a $2 billion international business across 15 countries. Then she took the helm at ATIDA, a European pharmacy scale-up, and grew it from a single country into a 7-country powerhouse through organic growth and multiple acquisitions. Today, she's the CEO of Self Financial, on a mission to bring credit-building tools to over 100 million Americans. She has seen scale from every angle: hypergrowth, turnarounds, M&A, and mission-driven expansion. Julie, it's great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here today.
Let's start at the beginning. In your college application essay, you wrote that you aspired to be a CEO. That's pretty amazing. Now that you've done it, what's one thing that the college version of you completely misunderstood about what it takes to actually lead and scale a company?
I actually don't think I knew anything then except what I'd learned in my classes, which, was academic and interesting and useful in some ways. But I don't think I knew what I was possibly getting into. And I think probably the biggest thing that one would look at as a young person and then look at later in life is that leading is really hard. And just because you have a title of anything, manager, director, boss, CEO, board member, like, people don't just follow you because you have that title.
Right.
It is a tremendous amount of work every single day. It is not that I can say, like, "Oh, I'm the boss and things should work like this," and they just magically work like that, because I know we deal in the human business, and the human business is messy and complicated and different for each individual that's out there.
Yes. And when I talk to CEOs about leadership, I use a phrase perhaps similar to what you're discussing. I say leadership is defined by creating followers. And now, as a leader, you have to ask yourself, how do I create followers? How do I understand the language, the communication, the motivational aspects of being a leader to create those followers? So I can understand your perspective quite well. In your background, you mentioned 2 experiences at Accenture that were step function accelerants in your development. And you literally say, ask me about them. So we are here to ask you about them. What happened there, and how did those moments change the way you grew as a leader?
Great. Thank you for asking me, because I asked you to ask me and you asked me. So my first project at Accenture, I'm 2 years old, fresh out of college. I got put on an internal project at the firm, and the project's purpose was I was helping, like, the internal finance team create the weekly billing report for all the partners that showed what they were billing, what their forward billings looked like, what their utilization of the staff that were assigned to, say, like, the Chicago market telecom practice looked like. And it was built in some very archaic software. Even though I was at Accenture, I did not have, like, a technical background. I was a finance major in undergrad. And this was like a very code heavy project that I was put on. 2 weeks in, the person that I was working for said, Julie, I'm out of here. I hate this place. Place is terrible. Nothing against you, but you are in trouble. There is no possible way you're going to keep this thing going. None of the partners are going to get their billing, and they're going to blame it all on you. And I'm really sorry for that. I'm just really mad, so I'm quitting.
Oh my goodness.
And so I was like, wow, okay. And I was panicked, like sleepless nights at the age of 22. Um, but I kind of took it up. I was like, after getting over that, I was kind of like, no, I'm not going to fail. This is ridiculous. And so I just, I went to the boss of the guy that had left and I said, hey, this is the situation. I'm not very deep into this yet. I've only been here 2 weeks. Um, but just figured out a way to come up with an action plan. And I remember the coding language that this was built in. It was something called Fox Pro. Okay. So anyone that's like, I've never heard of that word since. It was the only time I've ever heard of it. People listening to your podcast likely have never heard of it. But anyway, I bought myself a Fox Pro book and I just got into it over the weekend. And then I talked to the HR person who had hired me into Accenture, and she's like, well, why don't we go find a temp? There's got to be someone that understands this coding language. And so I just kind of put together an action plan, and I brought this guy on, and together, we got through it. And it was incredibly stressful. And there were a couple weeks, I think, where the billing data, which was like really, really important to these partners, because I'm
Sure.
guessing their salaries depended upon it. Um, it was it did not come out, but, we had communicated that there was this problem and we got through it. And it was just one of those moments, that just made you feel like, "Hey, I took charge of something and it worked."
Yeah.
And it just gave me, a bout of confidence that I don't think I would have otherwise had I not been in that situation.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And well, it is these step function accelerants that make us who we are, and we have the confidence to go to the next level. I talk about this a lot with, my focus is scaling, right? And I talk
Right,
about CEOs, how do you scale? And a lot of it is being comfortable that I can take on whatever challenge is coming up in front of me. Why? Because I've just solved all of these other problems. And now I have the
right,
confidence to solve whatever problem comes up in front of me. And that's so key to the success of a CEO.
right.
Let's talk about your experience at Groupon a little bit. And you called
Okay.
it the most chaotic place you've ever been. What scaling insight did you learn at Groupon that you've been able to apply in your other roles as CEO?
Sure. One of the this is a really, just tactical thing, but when I got to Groupon, they were using Google Docs. And I'd never been exposed to Google Docs before, and I got there and these people were like, "Oh, let's do a Google Doc, Google Doc." And I was like, "What is wrong with these people? They're, obsessed with this Google Doc thing." But I think what it, uncovered for me, and now, obviously, this is, commonplace, and I think most companies that you probably talk to on your podcast probably use Google Docs, but
Sure.
I found that you were able to collaborate so incredibly well using Google Docs just because of the back and forth capability you had for commenting and sharing documents in just like a very real time way. And so that was just a little thing that I'm like, oh, I will never go to a company again that doesn't use Google Docs because it makes me so efficient. Um, and I think the second thing that really happened at Groupon was we moved really fast, and sometimes it was like a failure in moving fast, but we moved fast and could move on. And there wasn't always a lot of contemplation and planning around a move. You would just go do it and see what happened and then adjust afterwards. And while I think some of that was probably problematic in that we probably did that too much, it did get me comfortable with that as a concept, in a way that I wasn't previously comfortable with it. And so I think what I've taken that to now and that I use in my daily life today is it is great to move fast, but I think you have to be really clear on sort of one way and two-way doors.
Right.
And I think on two-way doors, you should move fast because if it doesn't work, you can come back in and recalibrate yourself. In both ATIDA, which was a B2C pharmacy business in Europe, which is just fraught with just regulation, more regulations than would exist in a pharmacy business elsewhere. Um, and now in Self, which is a fintech, so we have lots of compliance and regulatory aspects that we need to consider for the business. I use that fast moving for these two-way door opportunities and slower moving for the one-way door opportunities where, like, if you do something wrong, you potentially have a consumer issue, a regulatory issue, something that's just actually harmful to, potentially their customers or to the company. And I try not to move too fast on those one-way door things.
That is a great way to evaluate how quickly are we going to move. Can we reverse what we've done here quickly if
Yeah.
it's not going to work out? Now, you describe yourself as an empathetic and people first leader. So, from that vantage point, what's the biggest blind spot most CEOs have about their people when they're trying to scale fast?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, "Oh, they're like, that's a nice person. They're really nice, and um, they say the right things, and it seems like they work hard." I think it's taking, the people first to mean that you can't be hard on people or that you can't, uh that nice or values driven equates to outcomes, and it just doesn't always equate to that. I mean, sometimes it does, of course, but I think you need to see through, and I've needed to teach myself to see through some of the relationships that I have with people to understand, like, that my relationship isn't blinding me to maybe, inefficiencies that that person might have or help that that person needs. And if we're always having, I don't know, you have kind conversations with people, and sometimes that means that you don't, um, dig into deeper issues or bring up uncomfortable topics because you're like, oh, we have kind conversations. And I guess learning that, um, hard conversations in and of themselves can actually be a form of kindness. It's just a
Right.
more uncomfortable form of kindness that you need to get used to, and develop kind of the muscle around, being comfortable with.
Well, from a leader's perspective, I had a CEO that shared with me his 360 review. And the
Okay.
primary element that came through was he's so nice. And I said, uh oh, because it's not that being nice is a negative,
Right.
except that if it's how people describe you, what that really means is you're not holding them accountable. They feel like they can take advantage of that niceness. And
Right.
and this is a delicate issue around accountability because I don't think you have to be a jerk to hold people accountable. You just have to have what I call an adult to adult conversation. You made a
Right.
commitment, and now I'm asking you whether or not you're going to achieve that commitment. And if you haven't, we need to talk about that.
Right.
And that doesn't feel nice, but it also isn't a terrible conversation. In fact, it is nice because we're helping that person understand whether or not they're going to succeed here through that kind of
Correct.
conversation.
Yeah. And help, and probably giving feedback along the way. And like, um, I don't know, like, I hate the cliche, like, feedback is a gift, but it really truly is.
Yeah.
It is really something special if you can give people good feedback. Because I think at the end of the day, I don't know, I generally assume good intent. And I think most human beings, want to achieve and want to do better, always want to be improving and doing better. Like, I think that's sort of innate in people. And so I think allowing people to do that through your feedback, like this magical if given correctly.
Yes. And what I say to support what you just said is people really want to please the CEO. At least the people you want working for you really want to please the CEO. And what you need to do is be extraordinarily clear about how to do that. And that's
Right.
where feedback comes into play. And so
Right.
people actually crave feedback. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative, but they understand what path they need to be on to be successful.
Right.
So let's talk about you scaled companies in two heavily regulated spaces, and regulation often feels like an anchor. How do you
Hmm.
turn regulatory complexity into a competitive advantage when you're trying to outscale everyone else?
Yeah, I think the basis of it is first understanding the regulations and what they are trying to accomplish. And I say trying to accomplish versus say because I think they can be two totally different things.
Mhm.
As an example, like there's a lot of regulating bodies that regulate banks and financial services companies like us. We're not a bank, but we are a financial services company. And you can have one regulatory body that says X about a topic and another regulatory body that says Y about the same topic. And X and Y are like distinctly different things.
Right.
And so I think beginning it's like, okay, what are they trying? What are they actually trying to accomplish? Because it's probably not that far off, even though the words would appear to be completely, different and maybe even contrary to one another. Um, and then it's how does this apply to our particular business and what's reasonable? Now, like both those businesses, so both the TIDA, which is the pharmacy business, and Self, the financial services company, um, like we are first and foremost like making sure that we're compliant with the topics that we need to be compliant with. But those topics, they're not black and white. And
Right.
so it's applying like a reasonableness filter to getting things done within within that particular industry. And when it's unclear, being like, okay, this is what we think they're trying to say. They're not exactly saying it, and then kind of documenting like why you took the action so that if anything ever comes up, you're like, this is how I was thinking about this. And we talked to our lawyer and we talked to our compliance team and they were unclear as well. So this is what we interpreted it as and why. And just doing some just quick documentation to sort of protect yourself and to also like in the process of documenting something to just like think through the I know writing is a very good way to make sure that you can articulate something and that it makes sense. And so just writing it down to make sure that it makes sense and that you have record of why you did that particular thing. But it is super wildly complicated. The pharmacy business was across Europe, and you'd have these rules that just so crazy. Like, and you'd think as a naive American, I'm like, oh, EU. It's gonna be like all the same rules. Oh my God, they're just completely and utterly different. And you have to adjust and adapt based on what those look like and look for solutions that are flexible enough that you can operate in Germany and France at the same time without having to have completely different processes and systems for how you do your work.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I applaud you for finding ways to make that work. Let's talk about on our last topic, we're going to talk about my favorite topic, which is artificial intelligence.
Oh,
And
yes.
at Self, your mission is to scale financial access for the underserved. Talk to me
Right.
about how AI fits into how you run the company and how you bring AI into the solution that you're offering.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple like sort of levels to this. So we everyone at the company has an enterprise license to ChatGPT. So we have purchased those on behalf of all of our team members. We have a centralized function that does our sort of AI ops and AI center of excellence, and that team is responsible for uh, making sure that the tools fit within our environment. They do a lot of training for our different teams. Like, there's probably a different training for the finance function than there would be for the marketing function. So we go through and do training.
Sorry, would you,
Each
if I may interrupt you, when you talk about
Sure.
training, can you talk what kind of training, who does the training and how is it done?
So we have a couple people on this like AI ops team.
Okay.
Um, we also have champions from each department. So marketing would
Love
have
it.
a champion, finance would have a champion. Those champions have put forth like these are our three biggest opportunities we think from an AI perspective. And then our ops group then goes and helps the champions kind of figure out how they could go about implementing those top three opportunities that exist. And then we would do training. So let's say the marketing team says, we need to automate our push notification, like just the content of what it says, and
Mhm.
our subject line content. And so we would work with that team to figure out a way to programmatically code that within to whichever AI tool works for that particular topic, and then train the rest of the team on how to use it, how to interpret the results, how to add to it as time goes on. And so that's one thing we've done. Um, we also I'm very numbers focused CEO. And so any investment that we have, I want to make sure we have metrics around it, around usage, of course, but more so around ROI.
Hmm.
And I think some ROI is like incredibly measurable. So we've been doing a lot of automation of some of the customer requests that we get for things, where it makes sense and where actually having a machine answer a question is actually more robust than having a human being answer a question because you want the answer to be the same every single time. And if you have, 50 agents that get one of these queries, every 20th query that they answer, you're probably not going to have the exact same answer, even if you're using macros and stuff to get to that answer. So uh, the ROI is often quantitative, like, hey, we can do this 10 times faster. So we now can, we needed, 3 FTEs in our outsourced center to do these queries. We can now do them by they're automatic. So that's a very easy, like mathematical ROI. And then sometimes there's ROIs that are like more qualitative in nature. And maybe that sounds counterintuitive that you have a qualitative ROI, but there's people saying, I am just getting things done faster, and I know I'm getting it done faster, and I can't I'm a marketing analyst, so it's hard for me to track my minutes of the day because we don't work, like, in such a micromanaged way like that, but, like, I got 10 campaigns out, and I think I used to get 3 campaigns out, and I think they're better now than they used to be, and some of that's measurable, but I think, that's how we look at our investment in some of the AI tools that we're using.
I love that. I love that. And I'm going to describe what you're doing is AI from the inside out. And I haven't heard a lot of CEOs doing that, which is your idea of having everybody use the tool. First of all, big supporter of that, but then they finding champions within each group, and then having a support team to help them.
Right.
That's really fantastic approach to ensuring that we take advantage of all the capabilities are available to us. So, Julie,
Yeah.
thank you so much for our time here today. How can people reach you?
I could be reached at julie.szudarek@self.inc.
Wonderful. I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode of The Scaling CEO. If you found this valuable, be sure to like, subscribe, and share with a fellow CEO who could benefit. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please give us a quick rating as it really helps more people find the show. I'm Glenn Gow, the CEO Success Coach. See you next time for more proven strategies to grow your business and leadership.